Hello everyone, I am Dr. Sheikh Imran, degree lecturer in English, Telangana Tribal Residential Degree College, Nagarkund. I welcome you all to this online lecture series. And as a part of today's English lecture, we are going to discuss a prose lesson titled The Grammar of Anarchy by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This lesson has been prescribed for undergraduate second year students by Usmania University and Palamuru University as well. Now, when we come to this lesson, the grammar of anarchy, this is actually an excerpt from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's concluding remarks or concluding speech in the Constituent Assembly. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is one of the most influential brains that India has ever produced. And it is no exaggeration to say that he is hailed as the architect of modern India by many historians. He was born in the year 1851 in Mao, which is now in Madhya Pradesh. Having been born in an untouchable community, so-called untouchable community, he experienced the subjugation and the marginalization of the and he saw the he faced the utmost atrocities of untouchability. And despite all these hindrances, he was able to overcome all these challenges and finish his doctoral dissertation on British finances in India. And in the post-independent India, he played a very crucial role in the molding and the formation of Indian as a state we know today. He was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of India. And for his contributions and the immense influence that he has left and the legacy he left behind, recognizing his legacy, the Indian government has awarded him with the highest civilian award, Bharat Ratna. Now, this prose, the grammar of anarchy, is very, very important for its relevance in the present scenario in India. And especially, one could not stop observing the far-sightedness of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar rightly prophesizes and also estimates the future of India in 1950. He was able to accurately estimate and survey what India's future was going to be, especially in regard to the political as well as social and economic aspects of Indian life and Indian society. In this this lesson, the grammar of anarchy was actually a speech that he delivered as a concluding remarks on 25th November 1949, just before when he was going to introduce the bill for the acceptance of the Constitution of India. And before the motion for the acceptance of Constitution, Ambedkar, he is giving his opinion of the Constitution, and secondly, he is also telling what will be the challenges that India will face for the proper implementation and execution of this Constitution. And broadly, when we look into this speech, we get to observe three important points that he is making and which are very, very significant in the present scenario. First, he is asking us to abandon the grammar of anarchy. Now, I will be dealing in detail and also from a very rudimentary level, so that even the people who are not aware of the terminology will get an idea of what Ambedkar is discussing. Now we will discuss what Ambedkar means by the grammar of anarchy in the later part of the lecture. And the second point he is asking us to do is to avoid hero worship. And the third and the final, but also the most significant point that he is making is that we should not be satisfied with mere political democracy. And India should endeavor for a political democracy in co-measuration with the social democracy. Now, Ambedkar, on this significant day of 25th November 1949, begins his lecture with a very interesting remarks. He initially expresses his anxiety and his fear of India's independence and democracy. He says that he is little skeptic about the Indians about the ability of the Indians to uphold the democracy and the independence of India. He says that India was, he begins with a very interesting remark and observation that India has been a democratic country. He says that democracy is not something new that we are going to introduce in India with the approval of constitution. He says India has been a democratic country and the parliamentary procedure has been there in India since time immemorial. And he says, though India was independent, it lost its independence due to the treachery of its own people. Now we should understand that Ambedkar is telling the treachery of its own people, right? So now India is again left at the behest of Indians. So now again India is in the hands of Indians. So will Indians maintain it and safeguard its democracy? Or will they keep its democracy at jeopardy and lose its independence for the second time? And he says that parliamentary procedure that that we are going to introduce on the Republic Day, that is 26th January 1950, is not something new or something which has been introduced to us by the British government or the colonial rule. He says parliamentary procedures were very much there in India's antiquity. Especially, he gives the example of the Buddhist Sanghas. The Buddhist Sanghas, though they were religious, their very structure and the form was of parliamentary procedure, because they used to assemble, they used to take a topic, discuss on it very vibrantly, and then they move a resolution, and then they document the resolution, which is altogether in structure no much different from the parliamentary procedure. And he says we had this democracy, we had this precious parliamentary procedure, but then we could not save them or prevent them from the imperialism, because when when Britishers and other foreign powers came to India, they saw an independent India, but India lost its independence, and not just due to the invasion of the foreign power, but also due to its own lack, due to the weakness that it had in its social fabric, and also with the treachery of its own economic affairs. And but like any other, like any great philosopher or intellectual, Ambedkar is not just raising the question. He is also giving us the probable and most suitable solutions for this problem. He says previously India had enemy, and for Ambedkar you should see that caste is the main cause for all the agonies of India. And he says apart from the old enemy, that is caste system of India, we have a new enemy in form of political parties. And as you know, when a country is democratic, political parties play their foul plays in order to win the government, in order to achieve the government. And he is warning that the political parties are going to play a very crucial role, and the citizens of India should not prioritize political parties and their political affiliations over their nation. In the sense, all of us should give most importance to the country rather than our political ideology. And he is telling, in order to maintain our democracy and in order to maintain in order to implement the constitution to its full power, to its full flavor, we should follow three important rules or points that he is making. First and the foremost point that he is telling, or he's instructing, Ambedkar is instructing us to do, is to follow the constitutional procedures of achieving social change. In the sense, in his own words, he says, abandon the bloody methods of revolution. And and to quote Ambedkar, which is very important and a very significant quote, he says, we must abandon the method of civil disobedience, non-cooperation, and satyagraha. These methods are nothing but the grammar of anarchy, and the sooner they are abandoned, the better for us. Now, a diligent reader can but not fail to see the terms, especially civil disobedience, non-cooperation, and satyagraha. Right? These terms, they ring a bell and they remind us of the great Indian struggle for freedom, and especially the Gandhian methods. In other terms, these are also called as the Gandhian methods. And we know that Gandhi was able to bring such a social movement with the help of these very procedures that Ambedkar is calling as bloody methods of revolution. And he is even terming them as the grammar of anarchy, right? So now the Ambedkar seems to be in contradiction with the Gandhian methods. And it's no secret that Gandhiji and Ambedkar had their own ideologies, and they differed a lot in the way they perceived India. And when Ambedkar is telling we should abandon the bloody methods of revolution, he justifies it by saying that these procedures, which he calls as the grammar of anarchy, were justifiable when we did not have constitution and when we did not have constitutional rights or procedures to vocalize our dissent. But now that we are having a constitution of our own, we should not resort to such bloody methods of revolution. So whatever social change India wants to see, it should come in a constitutional procedure. It should abide by the Constitution of India. That is what he means by grammar of anarchy. Now, we know what anarchy is. Anarchy is basically a state which is out of order, which do not have a system, a proper governance, or which do not have any organized machinery. Now, anarchy is a total chaos. So, Ambedkar says these bloody methods of revolution, civil disobedience, non-cooperation, and satyagraha actually they lay the foundation for anarchy, which means they are the actual machineries that might bring Indian democracy at peril. So that is the reason why we should abandon the grammar of anarchy. And rightly, the title of this prose has been taken from this idea of Ambedkar. Now, moving on to next point, he quotes John Stuart Mill. And John Stuart Mill was a very popular 19th century philosopher. And J.S. Mill says that we should not lay our liberties at the feet of even a great man, or to trust him with power which enables him to subvert their institution. Now, by giving reference of J.S. Mill, Ambedkar is asking and directing Indians not to resort to blind worship of the politicians, or we should not be idealizing or deifying the political leaders or any other national freedom fighters as heroes. And he says that because Ambedkar feels that idealizing, idealizing or hero worship of a person makes the people to lose their rationality, their logical understanding, and the critical analysis and criticism of the person in question. So this question, Ambedkar, to quote Ambedkar, he says, this caution is far more necessary in India than in case of any other country. For in India, bhakti, or what may be called as the path of devotion or hero worship, plays a part in its politics unequaled in magnitude. In the sense, when Ambedkar is telling that hero worship is very, very rampant in India, and this makes India vulnerable to uh, uh, to to make the people to especially regard the political leaders as some idealized persons who cannot be criticized. And Ambedkar rightly says and reminds us to restrain from hero worship, because democracy, we should remember that the soul and the essence of democracy lies in the criticism of the government. And in case the citizens of a nation resort to hero worship of their political leaders, then their democracy is certain to be at peril. And that is why Ambedkar further says that it is nothing but a road to degradation and eventual dictatorship. And we know, and he uses the term bhakt or bhakti worship, which the bhakti, in the sense unquestioned devotion for a person. Bhakti is nothing but unquestioned devotion or reverence or admiration of a person. So he says devotion or bhakti in religion is good. It might lead towards salvation. But bhakti in politics is a route to foolery. It is nothing but a road to irrationality. And that is why he says we should stop hero worship. And the last but very essential points that Ambedkar makes is that that India, being a emerging nation in 1950 and 1949, when he was delivering this lecture, being a newly emerging state, he says that India shouldn't be content with political democracy, and India should aspire to forge and foster social democracy and economic democracy in commemoration with the political democracy. And Ambedkar, as I told you, is a very far-sighted personality, and he knew that through the to bring by including articles and provisions in constitution, he was able to secure political democracy for the downtrodden, marginalized, or the untouchables, or other communities. But then he was very sure that this political democracy itself alone will not suffice for bringing a social change. And for that reason, and to quote Ambedkar again, and this is one of the most and frequently quoted quotation of Ambedkar. He says, On the 26th of January 1950, we are going to enter a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we shall recognize the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by the reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. Now, uh, here in this passage, Ambedkar is making a prophecy of the future India, perhaps the India of 2020, the year we are living in. Now, here Ambedkar is telling India with this Republic Day, 1950. On this Republic Day is entering. It is now at a threshold, and it is going to enter into a world of contradictions. Politically, every person will be equal. The one man, one vote, and one value. In the sense, the oath of the vote of the upper caste person of a majority community will have one value, and the most downtrodden or the lowest rung of the economic ladder will still have the same value. That is, all these people, whether of higher caste or lower caste or untouchable, they all will have one vote, and their vote will be counted and will be having the same value. But when it comes to social life, the value of the man and the people in question change. In social and economic sphere, the inequality that has been there in 1950 will still might be there in the future India. That is what Ambedkar speculated, and rightly so, at least to some extent, whether in an implicit or covert way, this is a bare reality of new India. And he says we should, by reason, and he says by the reason of social and economic structure. And as I told you, Ambedkar saw Hinduism having inherent inequality in its very form and structure. And for him, hegemony is something that is very much inherent in its hierarchy. And perhaps that is the reason why he happened to revoke being a Hindu, and then he accepted Buddha, then he became a Buddhist. Now, when he is addressing this inequality, this equality in a social sphere, this inequality in a social sphere and equality in a political sphere, this gross inequality and this life of contradictions should be overcome. And Ambedkar says the sooner we overcome all this inequality, the better it is. And he gives the example of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He calls these three values to become inherent of the Indian society. And for him, these three values, that are liberty, fraternity, and equality, they are like a holy trinity, which cannot be separated one from the other. These inseparable three values foster the progress of India. And he says, and towards the end, he cautions that the Dalits and the downtrodden are very, very impatient to rule themselves, because all these centuries they were ruled by others, they were downtrodden by others. Now they are impatient to rule themselves. Therefore, the downtrodden and the marginalized should be given a chance to rule themselves, so that a proper and a complete democracy with a proper social and harmonious society, Indian society, can be formed. And quoting Abraham Lincoln, he says, "A house divided against itself cannot stand very long." And he says that if the Dalits and the downtrodden are still treated unequals, then there's a chance that they will blow up all this political structure and the constitution that we have formed with so much of labor. He says that if the Dalits are not treated as equals, then Indian democracy will certainly be at peril. And he says when all the Indians, the diverse classes and the communities, may it be region, religion, community, when all this population of India is brought to a harmonious state, that is when a proper democracy and a complete political and social democracy can be formed. And towards the end, he says, all these days we were blaming for all the failures, we Indians were blaming upon the colonial rule and the colonist for whatever underdevelopment happened in India. We simply blamed on them. But from now onwards, Ambedkar reminds us that now India is a democratic and independent India, and whatever it does to itself, Indians are going to be solely responsible for it. So with this, he says that all Indians should work towards social equality, and they should all give more importance to the statehood, to the nation, over all the political parties, political ideologies, and the political leaders, to form a progressive and a developed India. Thank you, and we'll meet you in a next class.